Welcome, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Future of Energy Financing, Energy Efficiency Financing, Scaling Solutions and Unlocking Potential. My name is Lina Konstantinopoulou. I'm the Executive Director of Sustainable Energy Finance Association. It's my pleasure also to guide you through today's program. Before that, just to give a short introduction about SEFA, is a Brussels-based not-for-profit to accelerate the net zero carbon economy by advancing the development and financing of sustainable energy solutions across Europe's built environment. SEFA brings together developers, cities, SMEs, ESCOs, housing actors, investors, and research institutes to close this gap, the gap that is still there, the financial, the policy, the operational capacity needed to deliver projects at scale. And we know that still projects remain too small, they are too risky, they are unstandardized, they are unprepared for investment, and it's leaving a lot of funding unabsorbed, and deep renovation is inaccessible, expensive, and inequitable. So in that sense, we are very much happy to welcome both our SEFA members, but also our audience today. Before we begin, I would just like to follow some team's technical notes. Please keep your microphones muted unless speaking. Use the chat for questions throughout the event. And if you encounter any technical questions, please message us. In terms of the agenda framing, so Telvin, please put the next slide. We have a very interesting program, so we will kickstart with the introduction and the scene setting, where we will hear by both the SEFA chairman, John O'Rourke, Adrian Joyce, Director of the Renovate Europe Campaign, who today Renovate Europe Campaign is also a co-host within this session. We also have Kristina Klimovic, Program Officer of the International Energy Agency Energy Efficiency Hub, and Carlos Sanchez Rivero, Team Leader for Energy Efficiency Financing from DG Energy. Please join me in welcoming, and I will just give the floor now directly to John O'Rourke, our SEFA chairman, just to give a short introduction. Thank you, John. I think we have my microphone is this. Can you disable the microphone of John, Telvin, please? I think we have.
Should be now able.
Yeah. No. Okay, John,
Yeah.
can you hear us?
Okay, you got it? Yeah, great.
Yes, sorry, yes.
Yes, not a problem. Thanks, Delvin. Excuse me. So good afternoon, everyone. So SEFA, alongside the Renovate Europe campaign, is delighted to host and present today's webinar. I think we're going to hear lots of great stuff. The webinar will explore innovative business models and financial frameworks that are helping to unlock investment, although, as Lina said, not at the pace that we'd all like to see. So bringing together, leaders who are delivering real projects in real markets, you can definitely expect today hands-on insights, concrete examples of what works, and genuine and honest conversation. So for SEFA particularly, today is an important moment in that in just over 2 years since its foundation, SEFA has grown into a rapidly developing ecosystem, as you can tell by the attendees and both the diversity and the quantity that are on the call today. So representing a broad cross-section of stakeholders who invest and engage every day in advancing energy efficiency and building renovation, SEFA has evolved into a place where project development and finance meet. So across the continent, we're helping to close the gap between technical ambition and financial execution. But most importantly, creating a meeting place for people, technologies, and ideas that are driving the future of energy efficiency and building renovation. Our program today reflects this, we like to think, and just a little bit about the two panels, and then I will pass this on. The first panel will demonstrate how SEFA is shaping, testing, and scaling the next generation of financing models, aligned with Europe's updated directives. And we're pleased to discuss how this work can support our partners, especially Housing Europe and the European Investment Bank. The second panel will demonstrate or show how quickly our ecosystem is expanding, bringing together cities, industry leaders, technology providers, and one-stop shops that are providing real results on the ground. And I think it's what I like to point out, and I point this out inside and outside SEFA all the time. These really are not abstract discussions. They represent concrete implementations and practical pathways to accelerate renovation and investment. So showcasing them today really underscores SEFA's role as a platform for advancing Europe's energy efficiency transition from strategic vision to on-the-ground execution. So in closing up my little piece here, we are very proud to partner with the Renovate Europe campaign. This partnership is super important because it aligns SEFA's work with Europe's foremost initiative for accelerating deep renovation while ensuring coherence between investment, policy, and delivery. So on that note, I will pass the baton over to Adrian.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John, for those very kind words. And indeed, SEFA is one of our latest partners in the Renovate Europe campaign, and we are very proud to have you on board. It increases the reach into the financial world significantly for us. So great to have you on board, and we're already partnering on a project that I'll mention shortly. So yeah, Adrian Joyce, I'm Director of the Renovate Europe campaign. Delighted to be here this afternoon and to be co-hosting this very important event. For those of you who don't know the campaign, it is a political communications campaign that's been running at EU level since 2011. We have today 50 partners, and those partners span industry, city networks, trade unions, regional energy agencies, think tanks, financial organizations, EU industry associations, and crucially, we have 18 national partners in 18 member states. Which gives us great reach at this very important time for implementation of Green Deal dossiers. And the ones that we are most interested in are the Buildings Directive and the Energy Efficiency Directive. But what is the call we make to our interlocutors and to our political masters? It is to increase deep energy renovation rate to 3% per year by 2030. And to keep it there until 2050. So of course, that is going to take a lot of resources, creativity, tenacity, political courage to achieve. But that's precisely why we exist, to give encouragement for all of those stakeholders who are going to influence this agenda. And I can happily say that our work over the years has influenced EU policy significantly, from a point where energy renovation didn't feature in 2011 to where today it's central to the buildings policy of the European Union. So what are the pathways of our work? We do awareness raising through communications, and currently we have a campaign on educational buildings, which we would like to see being deep renovated by 2035 as a front runner segment. Secondly, we gather political support around our campaigns, around our messaging. And in doing that, we organize events, giving speaking opportunities to both partners and those supporters to come forward. We are tracking closely the implementation of the Buildings Directive, so we should become a resource for understanding what's happening at member state level. We have launched a tracker, and our national partners are helping us to set that, to populate that. And maybe for today, crucially, financing is a real pillar of our work. And I hope many of you know that in the past, we undertook a study on the Recovery and Resilience Facility, highlighting how much was flowing from that facility to energy renovation on a country-by-country basis, a report that was updated 1 year later. We've also undertaken a study of the cohesion funding at EU level, trying to understand how much of it is flowing to buildings by the member states. And interestingly, about 4 times less money has come from cohesion funding as compared to what came from the Recovery and Resilience Fund. And now we have embarked on a new study with our partner SEFA, looking at the social climate plans and to try and understand how the money that will be coming from ETS2 will flow to the most vulnerable in the buildings element of the social climate plans. So not to take too much more time, but obviously financing is the first question that most interlocutors ask us about when we mention the ambition that we're facing. We know the challenge is huge, but we also know that investing in energy efficiency always pays back ultimately. But at the same time, it delivers comfort, higher value, and great economic activity. So identifying new financial flows or understanding better how to bring them into the renovation market through the MFF, where we're engaged in the discussions, through the concept of a European renovation loan, where our partner Climate Strategy, also in this speaker lineup today, are involved, is a promising model. So I'm very much looking forward to the discussion and coming back to you with a few wrap-up thoughts at the end of the afternoon session. So thank you once again for being present. Thank you to SEFA for partnering with us. It's just great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. And now we will hear from Christina. So Christina Klimovic from the International Energy Agency will just kick off the first, let's say, introductory part, which is looking as a scene setter, the first report that was just launched by the National Energy Agency on the energy efficiency report. So maybe we can share the slides of Christina.
Thank you very much, Lena. It's a pleasure to be here, and greetings, everyone. I'm a program officer at the Energy Efficiency Hub. We're hosted at the IEA, joining you now from a very cloudy, foggy Paris this morning. And just as a brief reminder, the Energy Efficiency Hub is a voluntary collaboration platform of 17 member governments. And today, very much looking forward to focusing on where we stand globally and how financing can accelerate progress. Next, please. So as Lena mentioned, the IEA Energy Efficiency 2025 report was just released on November 20th, so not too long ago. And I invite you to take a look at the report for various sector insights, investments, employment trends, but also policy developments. We've also updated the Energy Efficiency Progress Tracker that shows the monitoring of global progress as well. Next. So what we see here on the slide is that 2025 shows a real improvement in energy efficiency progress. However, when it comes to efficiency, we really have to take a longer term trends into account as well. So if we zoom out a bit and focus on the average annual progress by decade, we really see a mixed trend here. So in the first decade of the century, global progress was around 1% per year. Then in the second decade, between 2010 and 2019, it jumped up to 2% per year. However, the 2019 to 2025 progress, instead of doubling, has slowed a bit. And right now, it's well beyond the COP28 target that governments have agreed in 2023 of doubling global energy efficiency improvement by 2030. So overall, the world remains off track to meet its targets. Next. So when it comes to buildings, 2/3 of global residential energy demand is in emerging economies. That's what you see on the left. And 1/3 in advanced economies. But when we look at per capita demand, it's much higher in advanced economies. And here, probably not a surprise to many of you, space heating dominates in advanced economies, while cooking and traditional biomass remains very significant factor in emerging economies. And energy efficiency policies must really reflect those differences. Next. Now let's look at investment. So since 2019, spending on retrofits and building envelopes in both EU, US, and China, just the major markets were evaluated here, has grown by over 20%, reaching a total of $120 billion in 2024. However, this growth is a bit uneven, with Europe leading, US following, and China falling flat lately. Rising costs mean real investment gains are rather modest. And here again, this graph highlights how affordable financing and access to information is essential to sustain the scale of this momentum. Next. So energy efficiency investment in buildings is shifting towards renovation, which might be interpreted as a good trend for those of you on this webinar today. And global construction slows. Renovation are becoming the main driver of efficiency gains in the building sector. And this shift towards renovation highlights why collaboration is so critical. Renovation requires not just a technical solution, but it's really a mix of sharing knowledge, having financing solutions, having policies that underpin some of the work that's being done by the private sector, and of course having plenty of access to the financing options. And that's exactly where the Energy Efficiency Hub and the work of the IEA comes in, bringing governments together to accelerate this progress. Next. So the hub brings together 17 governments from around the world, and members include major economies from every region. Next. And together they aim to accelerate energy efficiency deployment. And today I want to specifically highlight on the next slide the Energy Efficiency in Buildings Task Group, which is a platform for members to exchange best practices. In fact, the task group is co-led together by two major European stakeholders, by Germany and the European Commission, with participation of several other countries. And the work over the past few years has focused on renovation primarily. So on the next slide, I wanted to say a few words about the Deep Retrofit Models report, which examined the experience from multiple countries. We had a wide range of countries here, from Argentina, Brazil, China, Korea to Saudi Arabia, and a number of others contributed as well. One of the key issues that we learned is that there is quite a lack of consistent definition of what it means to have a deep retrofit. And in some cases, you use absolute energy savings, but in other cases, deep energy retrofit is framed around relative performance improvement. So there is really not one way of defining it. And the report highlights some of the barriers, not only financial, but also regulatory, technical, social, and labor shortages, and weak market signals that explain some of the slower uptake. So I also welcome you to take a look at the report. And over the course of this year, the task group has been conducting a number of webinars and events that on the next slide, I can talk about some of the key essential financing for building renovations. Next, please. So some of the key instruments that the task group focused on were ESCO financing, green mortgages, green bonds, concessional loans. Of course, we can't forget the key de-risking tools, such as guarantees and credit enhancements. But again, financing is essential, but on its own, it cannot deliver the scale of change that we really need. And so I think what truly matters is to have a broader ecosystem, governments working together, private sector working together, sharing best practices and aligning policies with the needs. And hopefully this webinar is another step towards this shared goal. Thank you very much. And Lina, back to you.
Thank you so much, Christina, for providing a bit the scene setter at the global, but also at the European perspective. Moving on to Carlos Sanchez Rivero. Carlos would just give us the view from the recent European Commission initiatives and maybe give a glimpse of the new European housing package that it's coming in, if possible.
Yes, no, thank you very much. I think for this we need to wait a bit more, but yes. No, thanks a lot and good afternoon. And thanks to SEFA indeed and to Renovate Europe as well, of course, for the invitation to this webinar, that it is on a very important topic. Well, at this stage, I think it is clear to most of us, but again, always like to highlight certain important facts, and I think that it is achieving the EU energy efficiency and building renovation goals for 2030, but also beyond, requires significant level of investments. Although public investment has grown in the previous years, also Christina showed that these trends are somehow also extended to other places in the world. The investment needs that are estimated in the EU at around 300 billion euros per year far exceed the available public funds and that are mobilized by the EU budget and that they are mobilized by national budgets. So to reach this level of investments, we must work with the market to implement the policies and in particular to mobilize private investment, where financial institutions and investors definitely play a key role. Just also to give you this other figure, around 85 to 90% of the investments needed will need to come from the private capital. So that makes very clear that private financing is crucial. Well, the policy framework is indeed evolving. I would say that on the one side, we continue with our focus on implementation of the existing framework, which is very, very important. But also at the same time, there are quite a few actually, new policy initiatives that are shaping the future of energy efficiency, of building renovation, and also the financing angle of it. Elena, so you mentioned the European Affordable Housing Plan. Indeed, it is to be adopted on December 16th, so it is only 5 days. So this stage, I will not be able to give you very detailed elements of the strategy, but I can share with you that, of course, there will be a strong focus on financing. There will be a strong focus on affordable, but also on sustainable housing, right? And here is where building renovation plays a very important role, because we all know that contributes to increasing the housing supply, but also to reducing energy bills. Also, we have the support package for energy efficiency financing. So this is expected to be adopted in early 2026. And within this package, it will include an assessment. It will be a report assessing the effectiveness and the efficiency of the EU and national financing for energy efficiency. But also, it will include recommendations and guidance on unlocking private investments and also on one-stop shop services for the renovation of buildings. We are also preparing for next year a delegated act under the EPBD, establishing a voluntary portfolio to increase financial institutions' lending volumes to energy renovation. So that's also an important work stream. And at the same time, the Commission is also preparing the work for a review of the climate and environmental delegated acts of the taxonomy, with the idea to update and simplify when relevant the technical screening criteria. Moreover, an important communication as well will be the clean energy investment strategy. It is also expected for the first half of 2026, and will have the aim to double clean energy investments, and will, of course, address the investment solutions that are needed for energy efficiency. So energy efficiency will be an important part of the clean energy investment strategy. So more, because you will see that there are many things that we are also doing for next year. So we also have the heating and cooling strategy and the electrification action plan that will also include relevant links with financing for energy efficiency and with financing for building renovation. And of course, of key relevance for the work that we are doing in the field of energy efficiency, it is a legislative initiative that is part of the coalition work program for 26, that it is to develop the energy efficiency framework for the decade ahead. So it is focusing on the post-2030 framework on energy efficiency. Just to say that, of course, this will be very important work. Just to say that also we are starting now the work on this, and just for you to flag that this is something that it is important that will come out. And also in 2026, it will be a lot of progress. It is expected to be also made on the new multi-annual financial framework for 28-34. I think it is also quite relevant for the discussion today, that it is currently under negotiation, that there is a commission proposal which includes on the one side the 43% climate spending target for the national and regional partnership funds. So we can expect also here that energy efficiency and building renovation will be one of these important areas that will receive significant support from the plans. And we'll also have in the commission proposal, very importantly as well, a new European competitiveness fund that will support clean energy and energy efficiency initiatives, and will somehow be where certain of the existing programs and activities, including the LIFE Clean Energy Transition Program, ELENA facility, and other initiatives on energy efficiency will be funded in the future. So just to conclude, because I don't want to take most of your time, I've just mentioned at the beginning that of course there is progress on the public support, and you will be able to see this information on the report that I mentioned at the beginning that will be releasing in the early 2026. So there is progress on public support, but still it only covers a limited proportion of the investment needs. And indeed, we need to maximize the catalytic and market transformation effect of this public funding to unlock significant private investments. And to do this will require significant shift in the way that we are financing energy efficiency. In that sense, I think we need to increase the use of more efficient and innovative financing schemes. Here, I'm talking about blended solutions. I'm talking about deployment of financial instruments to unlock private investments. And we're also talking about reducing the reliance that we have on grants. I can tell you that on this, there's still a lot to be done, and I think the report that we are going to publish soon will also reveal this information, that there is a strong potential to do more on this regard. Also, we want to develop energy efficiency schemes at union level, at national level, at regional level, that will be able to deploy simple, tailored, and attractive energy efficiency solutions, building renovation solutions for citizens and enterprises. This is very important. Simplicity, that they are tailored and they are attractive eventually for the demand. Then, of course, project aggregation is super important. So support to project aggregators creates economies of scale to access finance, and including through investment standardization. So this is also very important. I think that will be the significant part of the future work will be also oriented towards this direction. And finally, developed and scale up innovative financial solutions and public-private partnerships that can prepare investment pipelines, that can risk investments, and therefore eventually mobilizing private sector funding. So just to conclude, that collaboration is key. I think most of you already know, but we are running the European Energy Efficiency Financing Coalition that was launched in 2024, and it is a crucial partnership between the Commission, between member states, financial institutions, and recently also the industry, to deliver on the objectives that we have set to mobilize investments on energy efficiency and on building renovation goals. And with that, I will conclude my intervention here. Lina, back to you.
Thank you very much to both Carlos and Cristina for setting the scene. I will not spend more time. I want to move directly to Nicolas, and where we will start the first panel on innovating financing models. Nicolas, the floor is yours. You can introduce the speakers of the panel.
Great, thank you, Lina. And I'm going to be moderating panel number 1, innovative financing models and solutions. Just some quick scene setting. I mean, we're very, very pleased to welcome our guests who will open and set the scene in a moment. Sorcha Edwards, who's General Secretary of Housing Europe, and Tatiana Bustil, who's Senior Economist for the European Investment Bank. We'll do an introduction. You'll hear from them shortly. Just a very quick scene setter. I mean, in terms of what we're going to look at in this panel, over the last few years, there's been a huge amount of work by banks and investors to kind of set the scene, and we understand that the capital is available to allocate to projects, but the question is, how do we get that capital flowing through? And the message from all around is that we need to build more bankable, investment-ready pipelines of projects and establish new asset classes. So in this panel, you're going to hear from members and partners who are working in the field with the public and private sectors to kind of make that transition to private finance that Carlos referred to, break down the risks, structure and aggregate projects and agreements, design the new products, new financial products and energy services, all with the aim of unlocking the potential of the renovation market and getting capital flowing into new opportunities. So in order to set the scene for the panel, and you'll see here, we have a range of SEFA members who are really active on the ground. I'll introduce them one by one as we go through the panel discussions on a number of different topics around housing, public buildings, and also technologies as a service. But firstly, to open and set the scene, I'm very pleased to welcome our two opening guests. And we'll start with Sorcha Edwards, General Secretary of Housing Europe, who I understand who's going to speak to the role of renovation in addressing the affordable housing crisis. So you're very, very welcome, Sorcha. Over to you.
Yes, very happy to be here. Thanks a lot to SEFA and Renovate Europe for giving me these few minutes just to give our perspective indeed on how things are going. Obviously, the overarching goal of our organization is to really bring about our theory of change of housing is to shift from housing, which is currently, unfortunately, one which is driving major inequalities and divisions in our society, but also indeed producing much more CO2 emissions than it should be. But the theory of change is, of course, and we see that this is absolutely possible with the right framework, is where we have housing that is an agent of inclusion for all different age groups. It can, when planned properly, it can make areas much more livable. And of course, it can be much more efficient when it comes to the construction phase, the use phase, and it can be also an integrated part of a more sustainable energy system. So this is what drives us every day in Housing Europe. And obviously, the renovation wave is really crucial and a crucial part of improving quality of people's lives, home lives, and lives in their neighborhoods. And I think this is where I think the EU has to also maintain this vision. This is where, of course, we need to focus on at a strategic level on competitiveness. However, it's about quality of life. It's about affordable energy bills and having more green, more livable districts that we live in. And so this is our overall goal. And I think energy efficiency and the green energy transition and a fair energy transition is really at the heart of that. So I was very happy to hear from the European Commission that, and we hope to see that reflected in the plan, that when we have this plan on the 16th of December, that sustainability is also really at the heart. Because I think as a society, we can't leave one so the existential crisis of having to reduce our CO2 emissions, and the other very burning social emergency of not having the right housing for our societies to function in a fair way. I think we have to, even if it requires more sophisticated policies, we have to tackle both at the same time. So I really hope that we see sustainability indeed at the heart of the plan next week, but also obviously a recognition of we need to meet people where they are. What's going to be at the topic of conversation around Christmas table is for many families it may indeed be energy bills as well as rent bills. So I think the EU, if it's to succeed, it has to be aware of people's burning day-to-day challenges. We have a very committed sector when it comes to sustainability. And we had just a review indeed carried out. This is why I've shared our latest State of Housing report in the chat. We had a review of where we are with our targets on energy efficiency. And I must admit, just like the International Energy Agency, it is a mixed picture. And again, I also appreciated the IEA's comment that it's the contexts are still so diverse, even within the EU, and what's needed from the EU in terms of funding, whether that's subsidies, whether that's grants, whether that's technical assistance, is really varied. But we have a mixed picture in that we see from my colleagues in our observatory, Austria and France in our sector, climate-driven retrofits still relatively on target, Netherlands less, so insulation going strong, but infrastructure affordability issues slowing things down. Denmark also steady, Slovenia modest progress. Lagging behind Germany, Ireland, Sweden, Italy because of funding and economic constraints. Greece, some examples of vacant housing and conversion, but also modest. So we see a very mixed picture, but we have to also recognize that many targets are now being actually reduced in many of us live here in Belgium because of cuts in public funding. We see the Renovation scheme, the targets being radically cut. So I think this is also the reality that we see. And I think without the public investment, I understand the comments from the European Commission on the need for private investment, but we will also need public investment coming in here. It's not only going to be financial instruments, but at the same time, what we see, for instance, is from the EU level, what can be valuable is the grant coming from the EU level with the blending happening closer to home. So this is why we have, for instance, the 5 million units in France at a much higher level of energy performance than the rest, because they've had zero interest loans, but also combined with a grant coming through from cohesion funds. So that cohesion fund is one of the only grants left in the French housing sphere, and it is very, very appreciated and welcome. And it is then used to blend and lever private finance at local level. So it can, even if so we hear the EU stepping away from subsidies, but I think we should, let's say, also check what's actually working and not abandon schemes that are actually making a difference to renovation rates on the ground. And just another point, we've just had a decarbonisation summit where we heard back indeed from some of the obstacles, but we also see new studies, for instance, from the Dortmund area, where they are balancing, so reduction, they have found in their studies reduction in energy consumption by 2/3 instead of 1/3 increases investment cost by 2.5 times. So this is an example in Hamburg, where they are focusing on a less extreme increase of rents for tenants because they have mixed energy efficiency with supply side, so geothermal and heat pumps. So I think this is also, while the best energy is the energy that's not used, we also recognize that for cost optimality and viability, we need a mix of different solutions for a fair energy transition depending on the context. So we are very much looking at all ways that EU level financial funds can help. So I see the speaker just coming after me, the European Investment Bank, very welcome partner in this so far. So we see just with the ELENA fund, so a very valuable technical assistance scheme has helped our Belgian member in Flanders roll out solar PV across the entire stock, with a resulting direct decrease in the energy bills for tenants. We now see a new blended fund, so 200 million from the EIB blended with cohesion funds to convert empty homes in Reggio Emilia as part of the midterm review of the cohesion policy, and the fact that we can now double the available funds for housing. So this is obviously currently hitting a few different targets, not only in-use renovation, but also the conversion of buildings that have remained empty because they've fallen into decline, means that you are saving the potential carbon that could have been used in new builds. So this is also an aspect we are looking at, trying to maximize the use of the existing building stock through not only renovation, but also conversion of buildings. Some cities there's a lot of potential there. So we also see the European Investment Bank has stepped in an alliance in France together with the Council of Europe Development Bank and the National Housing Bank to reinforce the intermediary so that they can diversify the types of energy efficiency and other new construction projects. So it's a really important partnership, and we hope that will be reinforced along with the role of national promotional banks and other ethical banks linked with SEFA indeed in going forward in the next MFF. So I think that's a little bit of the broader picture, where we are in terms of renovation, where we see the trends also in terms of local energy production. And we're looking at the grid package yesterday to see if it's also going to help the local energy production, because we see a lot of issues there also with grid access and grid costs. And a bit of, let's say, what we are hoping for with the next MFF, if we really hope that the downward trend that we've been seeing in the construction sector because of high costs can be somehow helped with cohesion funds and with support from the EIB and CEB. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm hearing we're talking about an affordable, fair energy transition with quality and life sustainability at its heart. But then to pick up on your point about the move from subsidy and the role of public finance, I'm going to pass to Tatiana Bostiels, who's senior economist in the energy department at the European Investment Bank, who's going to be pick up on some of the instruments you referred to in fact, Saoirse, in terms of what the instruments EIB is using to support renovation projects across Europe. So thank you for joining us, Tatiana.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to join the seminar and to support some of the positions that were made by the previous speakers. In terms of where do we see innovation in finance, because we have been talking about this for a long time. So I hear very much that we are not aligned with the targets, and that finance is and remains a main concern in terms of delivering the pipeline of energy efficiency projects that actually are available within Europe. First, if I can have the next slide. I think that the policy agenda is also very important, in that, as Carlos has mentioned, there's been a change in the focus of the new Commission, but the message is very strong that the green agenda and the climate agenda remain very lively in the context of competitiveness and affordability, in particular energy efficiency leading to affordable energy, as we've had in a few examples. In response to that, in the EIB, what we did in the last year is that we have revised our objectives, and we now have a strategic roadmaps which aim to address the concerns of competitiveness and affordability. And I'd like to emphasize how we have very much maintained the role of the EIB in supporting financing of energy efficiency within this strategic roadmap. There are two flagship initiatives that I would like to point within the objective of the Climate Bank, but also in the context of reinforcing Europe's social infrastructure. We've heard about empty homes, we heard about the cost of housing, we heard about energy, affordable energy, but also in the context of a modern cohesion policy and a climate transition which is just for all. And the two programs that I would like to present to you today as examples of where we are moving forward are first, of course, the investment platform for affordable and sustainable housing, which fits very much in, as Carlos mentioned, in the Affordable Action Plan of the EU, as well as another initiative which I felt was very relevant, even though the name might not seem so obvious for housing, which is the Small and Medium Enterprise Energy Efficiency Program that we are pushing. And I'd like to say, next slide, please. We've heard that there is a big gap in terms of finance, which is quite well known. We were very proud in the EIB that in 2024, the numbers for energy lending were extremely high. We reached a record of over 30 billion of financing for energy efficiency, of which 7.5 billion for energy efficiency. In 2025, I can tell you that given the amount of work that we had in my team in energy, those numbers will be even higher. And that fits very much within the context of past policy frameworks, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, the InvestEU, and of course the REPowerEU in the context of the Ukraine conflict. What it does show, though, is that 7.5 billion is nowhere near what is needed in the market. And so we are very much working with our counterparties, promotional bank, institutional investors, and private financial institutions to work with them so that we can co-finance energy efficiency together. The way we have gone about it is to see what we had already done in the past, where we could, what was working. We also did a lot of stakeholder consultation on that, and where we could find ways of improving, but especially how we could scale up and how we could simplify the offering of the EIB. In particular, in the action plan for affordable and sustainable housing, we now have a broader set of thematic priorities. The objective remains very much to increase the supply of both affordable and sustainable housing units across the EU. As we know, it's not going to be through construction of new buildings only by any means, but renovation and conversion is a very important theme there. One example, building on the one in Italy, is we also recently invested in conversion of office building into affordable and sustainable student accommodation, which is a real social issue in terms of access to higher university in Italy, but also across the EU. So the key focus is going to be on innovation. How do we support the whole value chain of construction, not just the mortgages? And how do we scale up innovative building technologies? So we have a dedicated envelope targeting innovative building technologies and processes. And the aim is to accelerate the delivery of refurbished or new units. Sustainability, it's about energy efficient renovation, whether it's deep renovation. To be fair, within the EIB, what we see is that we really find it difficult to finance deep renovation. We do as much as we can. We encourage our financial counterparties to target the market and to source this type of project, but this is by any means not the main financing that we produce. We're still very much focused on green mortgages and on light renovation of buildings. That is a reality, and we're working to address that. The aim is to reduce the carbon footprint, of course, but also to tackle the affordability challenge, the living costs through energy savings, as we've seen in the example. And affordability, crucial component in the context of the cost of living crisis, and we do need to increase the housing supply below market prices in Europe. The financing for this is about 3 billion per annum, and it should be rising. We'll have more clarity on that in 2026. And it was emphasized the key blending of both the financing component, the financing products, with technical assistance and grant. It's what makes a product a success. I'll go to the next slide, please. I wanted to touch on the EMI for SME initiative, because this is an area where we're going to be putting a lot of our target budget, with a target of 17.5 billion in the coming 3 years, dedicated to supporting the SME and the mid-caps ecosystem in Europe. It's really important to understand that housing industries which support the housing industries are 90% SMEs and mid-caps. So it's really an important target area to support sustainable and affordable housing. The aim there is very much to scale up the existing products that we have, as well as emphasized by Carlos, to crowd in alternative and private investors. So the aim is very much to help the different financial institutions and promotional banks in member states to source additional projects and to work with the EIB through EU monies and EU guarantees under the InvestEU to crowd in investments. There's also a very big component, which is technical assistance. People forget that even banks need technical assistance on how to develop green mortgage, green renovation products, how to work with housing association, how to work in a coalition. And so we are very much supporting also the financial sector in delivering simplified and more risk rated products which actually provide affordable financing. We heard that affordable financing is key to deliver this, and the blended element is crucial, and this is how we're looking at this. In my next slide, you're going to see a lot of names of the products that we offer. I think the key of that is really to show that while we want simplification, we also need to have a tailored product to the needs of a given energy efficiency project or a strategy. So we really have looked across the whole portfolio of financial products of the EIB and see where we can scale up. Direct lending is something that it's our bread and butter in the EIB, working with local authority, public entities, housing association, private promoters. That continues very much. Another area where we have increased significantly lending on energy efficiency in the last 5 years is what we call indirect lending. So providing lending to National Promotion Bank or public and commercial banks for them to on-lend to the final user, whether it's the housing association, whether it's the ESCO, or whether it's the private individual. We've mentioned and we've heard risk sharing. This is a key and crucial demand from the financial market, and this has been provided under the InvestEU, the European program, so that the EIB is one of the agents which provide those guarantees to the European Investment Fund to SMEs and mid-cap and ESCOs, which means that they can provide much better financing terms to the final beneficiaries. And what we see is usually a blending of lending, guarantees, technical assistance as the most successful way of delivering projects that actually end up allocating money to projects. I've mentioned the EIB, but also the EAF, because we work very closely together across the EIB group to target the whole market. And finally, advisory, we have this new program. You've all heard about Elena, but we also have a program under the Green Gateway, which now is a one-stop shop where we offer advice to financial institutions as well. And that includes an online tool to assess eligibility, to simplify the process, as well as support and help desk. I have a number of examples, but I'm happy for you to see those when you receive my slides, and very happy to take on questions towards the end of this session in the webinar. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tatiana. We're very tight on time. We're running slightly behind the schedule. So what I'd ask in terms of questions, please by all means post questions in the Q&A box. And we'll see if we can pick them up as we go along and touch on different themes. But I want to move quickly to hear from the panelists as well. Very important. We asked EIB to speak because we hear from our members the very important role of EIB in sort of supporting lighthouse and major projects on the ground. So it was great to hear from Tatiana there. And we see this emphasis on the continued role at the subsidy, public finance, moving to affordable finance, and also the important role of technical assistance. But let's move on to hear a little bit much more from work on the ground from SEFA members. With our panelists. So we're going to first look at the topic of housing. And in the first discussion, we look at the challenges around housing renovation in terms of bringing affordable and social housing up to standard and tackling the broader challenge of reaching owner-occupiers. And for that, we're going to speak with, we're going to hear from Alvaro Alcázar, Senior Project Manager at G&E Finance, and also Eduardo Brunet, who's Spanish Director of Green Finance Institute. So let's start with Alvaro. Who is Senior Project Manager, G&E Finance. Are you there, Alvaro?
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you, Nicholas.
And I understand you're going to briefly talk to the SHAPE Affordable Housing Initiative and tailoring neighbourhood level solutions.
Yes, The CPU project, maybe you heard about it, like the Affordable Housing Initiative European Partnership, is one of the projects that GNE Finance is involved, providing financial assistance to make these renovations real. In this project, we refer to lighthouse districts, like these work models for renovation or construction of affordable or social housing. We refer to decent homes that include this district, include at least one of the following features. Of course, we are talking about projects that use technologies, use energy efficiency measures, they use the renewable energy as energy sources, etc. But also we try to keep projects that are people-centered projects, people-centered business models. We are working with energy communities, with co-housing, social housing cooperatives, etc. And on top of that, we try to reach projects that experiment co-creation and engagement practices. The consortium is providing huge assistance to all these projects from the technical side and from the financial side. We at GNE Finance, we are working in the financial side, and in this regard, in this specific project, we are providing to our pioneers in the CPU. There are 3 calls for applications. We are running now with the 3rd call for applications. And with our pioneers, there are project promoters in different municipalities around Europe. Every pioneer, every project is a different level of maturity. From the financial side, we are providing them with tailor-made support. We analyze their projects, their ambitions, and we guide them in a way that helps them to understand how to finance their development. On top of that, we have a learning platform that is going to include a financial training course. In this financial training course, we are covering all the stages they need to know from the original idea of the renovation to the creation of this financial plan, this final financial plan. And also we are making an important focus on all the funding sources, all these innovative financing mechanisms they can use, they can adopt to make their project reals. And from the financial side, on top of that, in addition, we are accompanying them with other activities, such as the provision of financial webinars with different experts. We had colleagues from the European Commission explaining different funds and programs. And also we are having like a simulation activity for all these pioneers where they can simulate a pitching session, like if they would be in front of real investors, in front of a development bank, a commercial bank, etc. So in few words, that's what we are doing in the CPU project.
That's great. Thanks very much, Alvaro. I'll have a question back to you in a moment, but first I want to also hear from Eduardo Brunet, who's a director in the Spanish office of the Green Finance Institute, who's briefly going to speak to us about a new generation, the leading role he's playing in developing a new generation of property-linked renovation loans. Eduardo, 4 to 5 minutes on that for us.
Did you say 45 minutes?
4 to 5 minutes.
glad to. Well, hello everyone. First of all, it's music to the ears to hear you, Carlos, talking about the European plans and your visions. On this webinar, just wanted to present you something we're working on from a live European lab project together with SEFA, Jules Assets, Spain SIF, DNO. It's actually the result of a lot of market and public sector engagement. Whether we identify, obviously, you all know a couple of barriers, which is loan paybacks, upfront payments, problem with selling and transferring the property, not a lot of propensity to use green mortgage for retrofit. So we developed this concept of property linked finance, where the finance is basically, as the name says, it's kind of an asset-based finance. So we depart or give more room for lower credit scoring of owners. We launched the Global Property Linked Finance Initiative in September, New York, together with Climate Bonds Initiative, Sean Kidney driving that. And in Spain, we have under this lab project, we're developing a new financial a new finance product that we are creating, or we want to develop as an asset class, or something that really can scale. Whether it's going to be simple, it's going to be tailored, it's going to be local, and can be later used in the capital markets. Now, and what we're doing that through reviving, giving new life to a very old legal advice in Spain and civil code, which is called the censo consignativo. In the 16th century, sorry to go back to history, but in the 16th century, because of usury concerns, there were not loans. There were not a loan market itself. All the lending for the main economic activity, what was agriculture at the time, was made through this figure, through the censo. The basic figure of this applied to building renovation is a product where the initial capital given to the property owner to finance the retrofit is given as a permanent benefit, meaning as a big difference from any other loan, even mortgage, is that you do not have to repay that initial capital. That's for you. That's for good. Cannot be accelerated, cannot be asked for repayment. Instead, the property itself is charged with a canon or a rent or a fee. Well, in Spain it's called canon, but you can call it whatever it is, for the next anything from 20 to 70 years. So a length of time that clearly shows that at one upon a time you're going to transfer your property with the canon attached. It's like another property tax for the building, and that you understand that you're going to be paying as long as you own the property. That canon can be fixed, can be floating, can be tailored to savings. The censo can be transferred, it can be divided, so it can play also in multifamily property buildings, and has some unique features, a very very favorable accounting treatment, which is off balance sheet for the building owner. So we can tackle big projects, deep retrofits in circumstances where the owner is quite leveraged. So this is what we're doing. We call this product, or the live project is called New Pace, and this together with a PACE proposal has already been included by the Spanish Minister of Housing on the National Renovation Plan that is going to be presented in 2 weeks to the European Commission. So there is a major public backing that this is a very promising, innovative financial product to be further developing. Under the LIFE program, we're developing something similar in Netherlands. We'll be exploring 5 other countries in Europe. because it's a civil code, a Spanish civil code device. It is applicable in most of Latin America countries, Philippines, and Louisiana, because it's a Spanish origin. So yeah, we're really eager to continue this project and piloting in the coming year.
That's great. Thank you very much, Eduardo. Okay, we're just going to have a couple of questions back to both Alvaro and Eduardo. At the end of the panel, I forgot to mention, we'll come back actually to Tatiana and Sosha to get their overall impressions as we move through the sort of work on the ground of the SEFA members. But just very quickly, a question first back to Alvaro. And if we can keep the responses relatively quick and concise so we can move through the panel. Alvaro, yeah, so you've worked as a mentor for these neighborhood projects. What do you see as the biggest challenges faced to kind of help these neighborhood projects build financial models and select the right financing mechanisms?
The biggest channel for this project challenges. The biggest challenges for these project promoters lies always or most of the times that we are working hand in hand with them, and we usually work with very technical profiles, real experts in their field, and all of them has everything clear about which measures they have to use, how to retrofit this, with which technology. If something is missing in their knowledge, they know how to find the solution. But when we go for finance, we see that they are most of the times alone. Of course, in all of these organizations, there is a financial officer working with different topics. That I don't want to say that those financial officers lack of financial literacy, because they are experts in their field. But when we are talking about building retrofitting, district renovation, urban decarbonization, we are in a new scope. Where they have to start to think beyond than business as usual, beyond these traditional funding sources, and they have to start to think about other alternative financing mechanisms, what we are referring to here as innovative financing mechanism. And in the end, there is not an unique solution, a magic solution that we can apply for all projects. We were talking about heat pump subscription model, all the mechanisms that Tatiana presented, this property-linked mortgage that Eduardo presented. There are other innovative financing mechanisms that exist since decades ago, like this on tax related to what Eduardo explained, this on bill. And in the end, together the technical officer, the project promoter, has to be together with this financial officer to understand all the financial inputs to create a specific tailor-made project financing structure to carry out, to make it real. And this project financing structure, there could be thousands of project financing structures. You have to combine all these funding sources with this mechanism, etc. And what is working in your region, in your municipality, maybe it cannot work in the other neighborhood, in the other municipality, depending on regulations, depending on too many things. So for us, what we are seeing in all these projects is this necessity to create capacity, to increase the knowledge of these financial officers to understand all the challenges they are facing, and that they cannot renovate, they cannot construct, they cannot finance these projects as business as usual.
So it's definitely support. I think we might also see a link later on in the second panel with the local role of one-stop shops and other kind of support agencies on the ground. Just coming back to Eduardo, so we see that the property-linked loan product seems to break down a lot of barriers potentially to renovation. What do you see as the main? What do you think is needed right now, and from whom, if you wanted to really move from pilot to roll out of this in not just in Spain, but in the Netherlands and other European countries? Just very briefly, what would you see as, what could really help push this product out?
Well, we are finalizing basically a really deep legal, accounting, and tax analysis in Spain, and similar a product in the Netherlands, and we'll be moving into piloting in the pilot phase. The product features speaks for themselves. What we're launching now is an RFP to bring in a couple of big commercial banks to work along outside to make sure that from the beginning we are developing a family, if you want, a family of product tailored to different segments. It's not the same talking about single family, multifamily, commercial, public buildings. So we'll be working alongside them and together, and also already thinking about moving towards scaling pilots from transaction to transition, meaning that we'll be bringing together a fund, a tailor specific fund for this project to scale it at the pace we need.
That's great. Thank you very much, both of them. We'll have to keep moving along with the panel. I think that's been a focus on housing and some both neighborhood level and a very specific financial products with a high potential to kind of break down some of the barriers. I'd like to now move on to look at public buildings and infrastructure as a subtopic. And in this, we're going to look briefly at how to work through public-private finance arrangements to renovate public estate, and also importantly, using energy service arrangements to break down financial barriers. So we have two panelists. We have Eric de Sauvage-Vercourt, Senior Investment Manager at Investis, and also Csaba de Chiki, Chairman and Senior Partner of NSAVE Capital. So Eric, I'd like to start with you. So you're a specialist investor and developer of public-private partnership projects. You're going to speak to the role of PPP arrangements in building pipelines of public renovation projects. Over to you, and keep it as concise as you can, given the limit of time, please.
Exactly. Thank you, Nicholas. I can move on to the other slide. We'll very briefly present what we do at Investis. So at Investis, we invest and we develop these public-private partnerships. We are present in the European countries that you see there, but we are looking to expand and to invest in other projects in the whole of Europe. We're also present in Australia. We have about 51 projects in portfolio. We invest in these projects and we stay for the whole concession length, which is mostly 30 years, until the project is handed back over to the public client. So we can move to the next slide. So very shortly, what type of projects we finance specifically for the building decarbonization projects? Well, we decarbonize our own assets. The 51 assets that we have are from various ages, since we have been active since 1999. And we decarbonize them as they go, just to familiarize ourselves with technologies and best practices in that sector. And this experience we use to also contract either one of the three other types, which could be energy performance contracts or PPPs, or we also have one facade as a service contract that we are looking at right now, which is a kind of a new way of financing builder retrofits with with a call option on the materials at the end of the project. We only do the public sector, which is, but we are open to mixed models where there would be a combination of, let's say, public sector and social housing, for instance, with a smaller private risk. Yeah, we can move to the next slide. I will briefly touch upon it. There had been a very nice, there's a very nice project in Belgium where a big portfolio, a big pipeline has been agglomerated by two instances who didn't have one-stop shops yet and were going to use a combination of pubcos, opcos, and fincos to procure the renovation of these projects. Well, I'll just let you read all of this on your own after this presentation, since we don't have much time, but feel free to contact me or to ask questions in the chat about this.
Great, thanks very much, Eric. But I think your point there is you're working with public agencies to try and build a pipeline potentially in a local area or in a region which could be delivered via PPP arrangements. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We've been involved with the public entities. We have responded through market roundtables and did a lot of investigative work to help them structure the project.
Great. Okay. Well, I'll come back to you in a moment with a sort of headline question, but I wanted to move to Csaba De Csiki, who's chairman and senior partner of NSAVE Capital, who are facilitators of sustainable finance focused on financial implementation. Csaba has extensive expertise in structuring finance to deliver energy efficiency solutions, and I understand you'll be able to speak briefly to the potential of energy as a service agreements, which I understand you're an expert in. If you could speak briefly to 4 or 5 minutes on that, Csaba.
Thank you very much for having me. Wonderful to see SEFA organize such a high-powered event. I will step back for a second. I think it was 2019, SEFA's chairman, when we met in Modena, said to me, the only thing when you build this contract, it needs to be off balance sheet. And I think we are very often forgetting every building owner, be it the public or a private company, has got a balance sheet. If we don't find solutions for the energy transition, which are off balance sheet, then unfortunately, the energy transition stops right there. And I'm going to give you a very practical example. Imagine that you want to buy a building, it costs 10 million, you've got 2 million on the side, you walk to your favorite banker, he looks at you and you say, well, I've got 2 million and it costs 10, would you lend me 8? And you give him his business plan and rental income and blah, 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 blah. He then finally gives you the money, but you are prohibited from doing anything. So any income is going to be taken by the bank. On top of that, you are not going to be allowed to leverage anything. Now, what happens? You're having an old boiler which consumes a fortune in energy. You realize that you ought to change it. It costs you 500,000. You walk over to your banker and he says to you, well, my dear friend, which part of page 7/27 didn't you read? I will not lend you anything further. So we need to come up with solutions which are off balance sheet, and this is where as a service comes in. It is actually not the sale of an equipment which is on balance sheet on IFRS or under a leasing agreement under IFRS 16, which is important for the private sector, but the same thing is true for Eurostat in the public sector. So the solution is we give you an output of the equipment, and that's what you are contracting for. When we, on the first EU program which we worked on, created this contract, we had actually 13 billion of as of investors managing 13 billion in assets, helping us construct this. And it came out that everybody knows how much energy he needs. If there are more people in the building or they're working longer hours, they might need a bit more. Well, then there is a little bit of a premium on top. If occasionally there are less people, then it is adjusted downwards with a floor, because anybody understands that if you buy something which is capital intensive, there is a minimum utilization which is assumed. Otherwise, and you would have it if you would buy it outright. So on as a service basis, you are able to do energy retrofits which are off balance sheet. And if you then bundle these contracts, which are stable income, and that was one of the feedbacks of BNP Paribas at the time, at 80% of the expected cost or consumption, you would have a fixed fee, which then you are able to securitize. And this then brings you into the market for creating financial products. So the daisy chain is fairly clear. We have developed, and actually the contracts are with SEFA today. It is in, I think, 12 legal systems, 11 languages. It's there to be used. Go to SEFA. They are happy to provide it to you. And we are at NSF Capital, particularly my colleague Alex, who runs the business on a day-to-day basis, is very, very happy to support you should you need help here. Over to you, Nicholas.
Great, thank you very much. I'll come back to you in a moment on how you see we could actually take that and really scale up the use of these types of arrangements. But first, just a question back to Eric on, so your projects bring together both the public and private sector through PPP arrangements. And you referred to sort of building a potential pipeline in one location. What do you see as the main challenges to really create those pipelines of bankable PPP projects? If you wanted to scale your portfolio.
So we see the main hurdle is more on the public side. They have to they have to set up what we call a one-stop shop or a facilitator or a public agency to collect the data and prepare the procurement, which is very time intensive, costs also a lot of money. But we see that the public side is doing this more and more, and they gain a lot of experience, and this is quite going well. But not all of these agencies can procure for any other governmental body. So, for instance, defense cannot procure in Belgium through these one-stop shops that have been created more for municipalities, for instance. So there is still a bit of work there. And the next one is that once it's of course the finance, as Csaba already said, the volume once they've done all the audits of these buildings, often the public side realizes that the investment volume is huge, and then they think about and it makes sense to standardize and to have a central agency to do that, the facilitator. But they also look at standardized financing solutions, for which I believe the public-private partnerships will work, because we have done this several times, a program approach with a collaboration between public and private to procure projects together. There are several examples that we have done already in Europe that we can share information with freely with anyone who would be interested. And yeah, well, so financing should not be a problem, would not be a problem if you use public-private partnerships.
Right, thanks, Eric. And moving back to Csaba in terms of energy as a service agreements and the potential across Europe to deliver energy efficiency at scale. You mentioned that, I mean, SEFA now, through your work and the work of other SEFA members, there are standardized contracts. There's a standardized understanding of how these are structured to be attractive, to be able to attract capital, but potentially also to bundle them, to securitize them. Given that we have all that in place, what do you think is needed now to help push that out into the market and see greater uptake of this type of agreement, this sort of what is an off-the-shelf agreement? What are the really key things you would need to see, you think is needed to really push out this type of agreement and scale up the market?
Well, let me step back for a second. We are sitting, or the European banks, or the Eurozone banks are sitting on 13 trillion euros, which are being paid a dismal rent or deposit rate by the banks. This has been said by Mr. Draghi, by Madame Lagarde, my buddy, the former chairman of Erste Bank Group across Europe. So we are making a dog's dinner out of something which should be easy. We are actually not going to the depositors. And one of my boys always said, Daddy, the energy transition is slow. It's all your fault because you're not producing products. So unlike a bank loan, if we want to get Eric and you, Nicholas, your money to flow into the energy transition, we need to give you a financial product which you can book into your securities account, which means it needs to have an ISIN number, which it needs to be able to be settled across a system. So long story short, if we are able to scale, and I think that is one of the places where the EIB could really be helpful by assisting project developers with a warehousing facility, so that the project developer can roll out whatever he has got to sell. It is in the warehousing facility. There, a large enough volume is accumulated. Then you put the securitization wrapper around it, sell this product to investors who happily will hold anywhere from 5 to 10 year good yielding products. And suddenly, something where they had 0.5% return or money, which was given 0.5% return by the bank, is now possibly making 3, 4, 5% or even higher. And there is enormous demand for that. So we are just not creating the products to scale to satisfy the needs which the market is having.
Great, thank you. And I think obviously this links back to what was really proposed, as you mentioned, with the Savings Investment Union in terms of making that kind of connection with the action that's needed to scale up and access to depositors and investment and also pension funds and life insurance funds as well. Okay, well, we'll come back right at the end. We've just got one more panelist. We'll come actually back to Tatiana, who might want to pick up on your proposal there, Csaba, at the end of this session. So thank you very much, both Eric and Csaba. Just one more panelist. And I want to, sorry, just one moment. Who's going to look at decarbonisation technologies. This is Dr. Claudio Lamprecht, Head of OEM Sales of Findustrial. And thanks for joining us. I understand Findustrial develops pay-per-use financing arrangements for manufacturing technology deployment, with heat pumps being a really key renovation technology. I understand, Claudia, you've been working on a new heat pump as a service arrangement, and we're really interested to hear how that can potentially unlock new opportunities on the ground. So just very briefly, 4 or 5 minutes on that, on the service you've been developing. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Yeah, we'll keep it short that we can catch up some time. Yeah, maybe we jump to the next slide. I brought a concrete example from a company working with, they're producing heat pumps. And I think Csaba already outlined a bit the advantages of such power purchase agreements, or as we call them, heat pump as a service. We see, especially in Austria and Europe, the problem that that landlords have a barrier to invest in these new technologies because they cannot pass through the cost to the tenants. And so basically, when then we are taking away that investment, so they could buy potentially here, it's a dummy number, but 12 cents per kilowatt hour for, let's say, for the heat. And they can simply pass it through as additional charges to the rent to their tenants. And yeah, we heard the advantages of such a model, but why isn't it then heat pump as a service the mainstream business model to sell heat pumps? First of all, I would say most you push as a OEM manufacturing the heat pumps your revenues into the future and need refinancing for it. And as we see it, we work mostly with rather young companies that have, I would say at the moment, limited credit worthiness and they get only a certain amount of financing to launch such a business model. So we really see the refinancing of such a business model as a key barrier to scale this model broadly in the market. And in the concrete case, it's in Austria and in Germany, we developed a model where the credit rating of the end customer, so the landlord, is taken into account to provide the refinancing. And the model is outlined on the next slide. We call it sale and assignment of receivables. It has some advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that the credit rating of the landlord is taken into account. So we can mostly take out the OEM, so the manufacturer of the heat pump, out of the equation. And so also when that balance sheet is limited, the model can be brought into the market. Drawback is, you're quite unflexible on how to structure the agreement. So the heat pump as a service agreement. Usually the contracts have to be quite long-term and also with quite high minimum requirements which the landlord has to take, which in case of a heat pump not a big issue, as heating is always required. So I would say really the key to scaling these models is a bit a chicken and egg problem. First of all, the OEMs to offer in the market need refinancing. On the other hand, banks are only willing to invest in these new models if they see the pipeline and enough, I would say, demand from or business for them in the market to really invest, develop these models and setting it up. Maybe that as a quick overview, as a concrete example out of the heat pump as a service sector.
Great. Okay, so there's almost a sort of two-way street here. You're relying on the credit rating of who you're contracting this with, the housing manager, and then back up, and then also in terms of delivering the technology. But there's almost a two-way street from what you've described. But how do you see? Just maybe a question to you before we then like to hear from Tatiana and Sorcia in terms of their reflections on the panel. How do you see, Claudio, in terms of developing a bigger pipeline for these types of projects over the next few years? What do you see that you need to see on the ground or in terms of support to actually build that pipeline, given the type of the model you've described?
Yeah, I think it simply needs to be clear what is required to get refinancing and to make then basically the criteria is transparent and get quick decisions. So that for every company that wants to go in that direction, it's clear what they have to do and under which circumstances they get the funding they require to launch that sort of business model.
Okay, and I guess that plays to what Csaba described in terms of having off-the-shelf arrangements that both those setting up the contract and also the financial institutions are familiar with and can be standardized.
Exactly, that's going exactly in that direction, yeah.
Yeah. Great. Okay, well, thank you very much to our panelists. I think it's been a wide variety of different products, services, projects you've heard about, and also some of the challenges going forward, challenges from people working out in the field on the ground to scale renovation. Just to conclude the panel, I'd like to hear from both Sorcia and Tatiana your reflections on what you've heard. Maybe first to Sorcia from an affordable and social housing point of view perspective. What do you see from what we've heard, particularly thinking about the two panelists on housing, in terms of what's needed now to to kind of scale up the vision you set out in your opening remarks in terms of financial instruments and enabling mechanisms. I think you already touched upon it a little bit, but if you've heard anything more from the panelists to reflect upon.
I start?
Or yes, please. Yeah.
Tatiana. Oh, yes. Yeah, thank you. So I think Alvaro, who we work with also on the SHAPE initiative, explained it very well, sort of the complexities that face the local developers. So whether they are local authorities, housing associations, or local authorities that want to gather a whole area of private owners, the complexities of knowing what financial instruments are available, what is the best technical solution to use. I think as someone described it, as trying to get a sofa down a spiral staircase. There's so many different. It's complex, and I'm always so impressed when we see successful district inclusive renovations, because it requires strong social governance, strong local governance, and I think that's probably the key takeaway. It's the local governance, having entities that have skilled employees who are able to also upskill on the new digital possibilities that we now have available to also plan optimal renovation schemes. And that's not always a given in many parts of Europe. And indeed, we were looking at the countries that are set to gain more from the Social Climate Fund, Bulgaria, Romania. We know that in terms of local governance, it's very, very weak. They don't have housing associations. They don't have strong local authorities. People working in local authorities have very low incomes. So I think that aspect is crucial. And I think Alvaro explained it extremely well in his presentation earlier on. But what we do is generally focus on where they've got it right. I think Estonia has managed this very well. They got a very excellent fund in place, drawing down Council of Europe Development Fund, guided by the National University, so that they got the standards right. So the CREDEX fund, and then they bring in funding from homeowners in housing cooperatives, and they manage to empty that fund every year. So they always empty it in advance. So basically, I think what's required is real clarity for the local level. So you need to have a clear fund with clear access rules, clear eligibility, and preferably one in your region, or if it's a small country. So at the moment, and there are, districts who are getting it right. Also, the reason we started working with GNE was their work in the Basque Country. They managed to have a very effective one-stop shop together with the public housing provider and the local authority that brought in district renovation to homeowners and to social housing providers in the district with excellent one-stop shop, which had a public mission. So we see sometimes one-stop turned into commercial enterprises. The one-stop shop should be providing neutral information. It should not be there to profit off people's lack of information. So it's taken, the one-stop shops have taken a wrong direction in some countries. So what I think that's the most interesting, focus on where they've got it right, and that's what we tried to do in SHAPE, is focus on successful integrated district renovation, and then look at, okay, how do they manage the governance? How do they manage the finance? How do they maintain the rents low? And there you have to be really careful with private finance, because what are private finance looking for? They're looking for exit strategy, equity, and profit. So you need to make sure that the general interest, the consumer, at the core. We see excellent examples where we can steer private finance in as part of a public mission, because if we look at the Green Deal, and a good example of where there was over-reliance on private finance and private financiers who wanted a high return of investment, the whole scheme flopped. I was already working on this when the Green Deal was spoken at every two conferences a day for a year and a half, and it flopped completely because the private finance wanted a big return on investment. There is no return on investment on this, generally speaking, this challenge we face to future-proof our built environment. It's going to cost much more then it's going to give back in terms of direct financial return on investment. The return on investment is a sustainable society, and one that is proofed against flooding, against high energy costs, against heat waves. So I think the public interest has to be strong here, and the public investment has to be strong. If we're waiting on merely private interest with private goals to fix this, we're going to be waiting a long time, I think.
Right, thank you, Sorcha. So I'm hearing very important, the institutional capacity and governance on the ground to bring together activities, a clear and simple access gateway to whether that's funding, public finance, private finance, and this broader view on return, not just financial return, but social return and public good as well, and people at the heart of the approach. So a very broad vision for how to kind of deliver this on the ground. I want to move quickly to conclude the panel to Tatiana.
Yes.
We heard about the instruments used by EIB. You've heard about some of the work on new types of instruments, or also what's needed to kind of scale those instruments. What are your impressions on the role of EIB and other public finance providers from your side?
What I would like to pick from this, and is aligned with what Sorcha just said, is that we need to learn from what works. I like the title of this webinar, which is about how do we look at innovation, but we also need to be aware that innovation is not just fully new, it's also learning from what have worked and adapt it to different circumstances across the EU. Because a number of the elements that we've heard in terms of energy as a service in the broad way, I think it's absolutely recognized as a way forward in enabling a number of actors in the ecosystem to finance energy efficiency renovation, especially the off-balance sheet component. A number of those have been done now for some time, so there's a lot to be learned from what has worked and how to adapt those. I think the key is going to be about also scaling up. We don't need to start from scratch and invent everything anew. We need to scale up what works, and we need to simplify. I think what I've heard is that we still have to reduce the perception of risk when it comes to how those projects are perceived, both by the regulator and by the financial system, because that can also impact the expected return and the transaction costs, which actually affect the return. I think I'd like to finish by also emphasizing that we really need to look at it as the whole ecosystem of buildings. And in terms of innovation, what we also see, which maybe was less spoken about in this particular session, is innovative methods of construction in addition to innovative financing, such as off-balance sheet and service. And I think that's one area where a lot could also be done, in particular in the context of supporting the sector and affordability. So I'd like just to finish by mentioning this other innovative example that I wanted to mention, which is this lending envelope for innovation in construction, which capture well a number of the things that we have discussed here. It's about who are the stakeholders and how we can help them, which are the product and which blending of product will work best for them, what kind of advisory support they will need in order to make those products at a level of risk which makes it viable for a finance institution to finance, and how do we scale that up. And I think this is the same point I will highlight in terms of advisory support. There was a comment in the chat about the importance and the role of the one-stop shops, we again have to learn from those that have worked, and there's definitely a need to continue to support them and to replicate the model that works across the EU. And they are a key part of acting as agents to deliver energy as a service. So very supportive of that, and looking forward to see how the Commission, the Parliament and the Council agree on the multi-annual financial framework for further support of advisory in that regard. So very instructive, very inspiring, and let's learn from what has worked and scale it up together.
That's great. Thank you very much, Tatiana and Sorcha, and also to all of our panelists. I think that's been we've covered a huge amount of ground and a lot of aspects of renovation, a lot of different mechanisms, and I think some really key messages at the end there. And so thank you all very much. And I'll hand back to Lena at the halfway